Greetings, YouTube. LMS Tactical here. The train just went by, so we should be good to go. Look, this is a real simple subject, but I would be remiss if I didn't go over the basics every now and again. Choo-choo. I should have been an engineer. Guns, never just up and shoot people for no reason. Whether they're military rifles, target handguns, target rifles. There's no gun in history that ever decided that it was just going to shoot somebody. Every single time somebody has been shot by accident, whether it was themselves or some bystander or whatever, it is because of the negligence of the person holding the weapon. The only way that a weapon that's in your hands can discharge is if you have your finger on the trigger. So keep your finger off of the trigger. You guys tracking with me? Start paying attention to things you see on TV. In the movies, you can tell the actors that have no firearms experience, or they don't have good technical advisors while making the movie. And these are the people that have their fingers inside the trigger guard and on the trigger. There are millions of examples of why that is, like rule number 1. Well, rule number 2. Rule number 1 is treat all guns as if they were loaded, even if you've unloaded them. But today I want to focus on the trigger. Let's say I'm walking like I am right now, and I'm walking up on a suspicious situation where I think deadly force may be required. So I got my weapon out, I got my finger on the trigger, and I trip. Oh! You think there's a good chance I might pull that trigger? That's called a sympathetic squeeze. I trip, my hand tightens. When my hand tightens, if my finger's on the trigger, guess what happens? If I'm lucky, I just shoot the ground or shoot a tree. If I'm unlucky, the person in front of me ends up with a bullet in his body because of my stupidity. There is virtually no reason for you to have your finger on the trigger unless you're ready to deploy that weapon. And I mean make it fire, discharge, shoot, whatever you want to call it. When I was in Israel, the Israelis, I've mentioned this before, their police and military, they think that we are nuts in America because we keep our weapons hot. As law enforcement people, we carry our weapons with a round in the chamber. They don't. And they have numerous reasons for this. And they train that way. They train on how to draw and rack the slide in one fluid move. They're very quick. They believe they're just as quick, if not quicker, than somebody that's got a round in the chamber. I don't agree with it, but that's because I haven't been trained that way. So I go with what I know works. I keep my weapons hot. That means I keep one with a round in the chamber and they're ready to go. Now, do guns ever go off by themselves when nobody's holding them or nobody has their fingers on the trigger? Yes, they do. You know, I'm sure you have seen these videos on YouTube that show all these people making stupid mistakes. And the one guy that holding a rifle and he slams the butt of it on the ground and it shoots his hat off his head. This is mishandling of a weapon. This is his fault. Probably a good guy, probably a good shooter. He might be a safe guy, but you see, these things happen. Obviously, I don't know the details, but clearly the slide went forward and the round went discharged. The other one is, oh, what's another popular one? I know there's a couple of them where, oh, how about the teacher? We all saw the, not the teacher, but the black DEA guy that's given a class in like some school or junior high, elementary school, whatever. And he, ironically, just as he states that he's the only one in the room that's trained to safely handle a weapon, he shoots himself in the foot.
Okay, I'm the only one in this room professional enough that I know of to carry this Glock 40. I'm the only one.
I don't know the details on that. Did he have his finger on the trigger? Probably. Depending on what kind of weapon it was. Could the drawing of the weapon activated the trigger? Yeah. You gotta know what kind of equipment you're using in relation to the gun that you're carrying. You know, if you have some sort of a semi-automatic with no built-in safety mechanisms, and all it takes is a trigger pull, and you're carrying it cocked, and you draw the weapon, and part of the holster or your clothing pulls back on that trigger, you're going to have an accidental discharge. Those things happen. So there's a lot of facets to safe gun handling. I really want to focus on the finger on the trigger though, because I see a lot of the mistakes made, sometimes deadly, are people that have fingers on the triggers of their weapon. Now when in a police scenario, or let's say a home invasion scenario, you wake up, you got your weapon out, you have a suspect or two proned out on the living room floor, you've decided that you don't need to use deadly force yet, and you're waiting for the police, and you got your weapon at the, you're pointing them at the suspect or at the low ready. There's no reason to have your finger on that trigger. Now people will tell me, well, it takes a time to move your finger from the frame to the trigger and then pull the trigger. You know, in the grand scheme of things, with the great stopwatch of reality, it doesn't take any measurable time to move your finger from the side of the frame to the trigger and activate the weapon. So that's bullshit. The amount of time is not enough to even factor into any kind of a conversation. So I hope that this was helpful to some of the new gun people. I hope it serves as a reminder to you experienced gun people. And the bottom line is I want everyone to be safe, myself included. Like most videos I do, they're reminders to myself as well. Nobody is beyond making the most basic mistake. Nobody is. You will see highly experienced combat veteran Navy SEALs make dumb mistakes because there's a human element involved. We're all human. Humans are not perfect. So when you see somebody make a mistake and survive it, use it as an opportunity to remind yourself and to possibly teach them some of the safety rules that you follow. Remind them so that you can do your part in spreading the message of safety in firearms. That's all I have for you today. LMS Tactical. Stay safe.